What is up, plant homies? Today we're gonna do a video that I know a lot of people are gonna be interested in. Well, at least when I got into plants, I was very interested in the subject and it was hard to find information about it. It's probably a little bit easier now. I don't know. People seem to think that breeding anthuriums is some difficult task a lot of the times, but it's actually super easy. Like, if you can keep an anthurium alive, you can definitely breed them. So today we're going to be talking about breeding anthuriums and getting seedlings and growing them up. This is just going to be a short intro into breeding anthuriums. It's not going to be a crazy master class or anything. There's definitely some stuff I'm going to leave out, but I will get you started into breeding your own anthuriums, whether you want to cross anthuriums or you want to do purebreds, which I've done both. But right now in the plant market, it just became 2026. It's January 2nd, 2026. I would stray away from doing hybrids just because the market is so freaking flooded. It's hard to sell hybrids, but if you have pure anthuriums, it's a lot easier. So you can go ahead and get yourself some nice stock in a certain anthurium you like. Like, I started off with papilliums. I just call them paps for short because it's hard for me to say the freaking name, but I'll put it on the screen. And I also like crystals, but I do have a few other ones just so I can make some crosses and do this stuff for fun. But yeah, I really like crystals, so I got a few different types and I have a few different paps. I didn't really go crazy on buying paps because at the time I started, they were super expensive to get the named ones. So I just, actually there wasn't really many named ones when I just started. There's basically like good companies you could buy them for. I think I paid like $400 from a smaller size pap from Tazula, which was a popular place when I first started. I mean, they're still popular, but yeah. And then what else? I bought another one. I forget where I got them all, but yeah. So they were around like the $300 to $400 mark. I also imported one from Indonesia and got some from a couple friends. I think my friend paid like $250 for a smaller sized one. And yeah, you can see there's one right here that I just chopped and propped a while ago, and it's growing back quite nicely. And then you can see there is a variegated crystal. A lot of people hate on variegated crystals, but I think they look friggin' awesome. As you can see, there's two different stages in their growth. There's one that has a yellowish tint that will turn white, and then that one on the other side is newer leaf, which is more pinkish, that will turn white. But yeah, same plant, very awesome. And then down there somewhere I have some more crystals, a red crystal, a green on green, and some mint ones. But yeah, enough of that. Let's get into breeding them. I'll show you the different stages in the flower or inflorescence. So basically, a flower or inflorescence will start off as the female part, and that will be a sticky little gooey substance that comes out of the inflorescence. And I don't have one going right now, I don't think, but then that will transform into the pollen phase, which is the male. And then usually people will use harder plants like a luxuriance, where it takes like a whole year for the seeds to develop on the inflorescence. They'll use that as the pollen parent and use something else like a crystal or a pap as the one that carries the seeds. Another thing to note is that the plant usually takes on the characteristics of the plant that carries the seeds. The babies will look more like the parent that carries the seeds, not the pollen donor. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But the pollen donor will give some characteristics, like I'll show you some smaller plants later that a forgetii was the pollen donor. And a lot of the well, not a lot, but like 10% of the seedlings have closed sinus, and they look like forgetii, which is very cool. But yeah, So let me see what stages of inflorescence I can find around my room, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, so this is how your inflorescence will look. It will come out of the bottom of a leaf, and it will start like this. It's enclosed, wrapped up kind of in the little, I forget if they call it the spathe, but it's or the sheath or something. It's basically just a covering that encloses the flower until it's ready to open. So that is the first phase of your flower, and that's where it all starts, my friends. This right here is the next phase. You can see it has opened. This is the cover, and it grew out a little bit. And then after this, which I will have to come back in a couple days and recap, show you when the sticky substance is coming out. But that is the time, once the sticky substance starts coming out, I usually wait till it's like 3/4 or 3/4 up the way of the inflorescence before I pollinate it. But yeah, so this is the second phase where it's just green with no sticky stuff coming out. And then the next phase, which I'll have to come back and film, but I'll probably edit it to make it look like it's next, is the sticky substance phase that comes out. This is the third phase I was talking about. It's kind of hard to see because this is a newer top cut and this is its first flower, but you can kind of see there is a sticky fluid-like substance called the stigmatic fluid. Finally can remember the name. So this is the third phase of the flower. Let's see if I can get a shot of this part, this side of it. Maybe you'll be able to see it better. Yeah, you can totally see some little drops on there, like right in the middle of the screen. So usually there'll be a lot more, but I had to finally make this video. It was taking too long and I just didn't want to wait any longer. I guess this side has a little bit more on it. This is that stigmatic fluid I was talking about. We can zoom up on it a little bit more and you can see. So when it gets to this phase is when you want to rub that pollen all over it. And I usually do that for like 3 or 4 days in a row just so I know it sets. This is the green on green crystal I took the cutting from. By the way, this is the top cut. You can see right here it's a little bit different shade of green, but yeah, when it's changing into a new leaf you can see the color a lot better. It's like gold one part and then pink the other part, but yeah, I think you could tell it's a nice little green on green variegation there. And then you can see you will get a flower with pollen. So all that white stuff on there is the pollen of the plant. You can rub it off. So there you can see after rubbing the plant, I got a little bit of pollen. When it's really fertile and the pollen just starts coming out, you can get a little more. But yeah, you can see the white stuff on my fingers. So basically that is the third phase, and that's what you use to mix into the sticky stuff to get seeds. So I'm lucky enough to have enough flowers. Usually, as you can see, there's 5 right here. Then I have 1, 2 up there. Then I have 1 there. Then I have 1 up here. Then I have some over there. So basically I always have flowers that are ready. There's a luxuriant, see the one in the back over here is one that has been going for like about 6 months, I think, and it's just starting to get bumpy. This one in the center is a new flower, or kind of like not a new one, but it's a lot newer. It's probably a month old. And then that one in the back there has been going for like 6 months. So as you can see, they take forever to grow. But yeah, let's get back to it. So like I was saying, I'm pretty lucky to always have flowers that I want to use. And basically what I do is just wait till one is in the sticky phase, which isn't right now. But just imagine this had the sticky fluid on it. And I'll just simply rub them together like this. And I'll do that for about 3 or 4 days until the sticky stuff disappears, and then it's almost a guarantee they will be pollinated. You can also use a makeup brush, which works pretty well, or you can just use your fingers, get the pollen on your fingers, and then slide it up and down on the flower that's ready for it. But then you can see here is the next phase. You will start getting some little bumps on your inflow. So you can see in between there's these little tiny bumps, And that's how you know that bad boy is pollinated. Then the next phase, of course, is when you have the flower that's fully pollinated. You know when the seeds are ready because they'll pop out like this one here. Sometimes you can see a little white part in the back, almost like it looks like a little loose tooth or something. But you can clearly see that that one is popping out right there. And with just a simple little touch, it will come out just like that. See, there's that little white part on the back I was talking about. If you can see that, then it's definitely ready to come off. You definitely don't want to pluck them off. You just want to wait till they're ready to almost fall off and then gather them up. All right, homies, so one more tip I can give you is to spray your inflorescence when it has berries like this. Like once you see the first berry come out, then I usually spray mine like once or twice a day because that helps the rest of the berries pop out. Like sometimes if you don't see any berries pop out and then you spray your inflorescence and you come back like an hour later, there'll be a bunch popped out. Or you can like wrap it in a wet paper towel and leave it for a few minutes. I just like to spray it. I think I mentioned on here before, but I use these like hair stylist sprayers that do like a fine mist like that. And I just literally put my hand behind it and drench the inflorescence and make sure it gets all in there. But yeah, I'm gonna pluck the berries that are ready right now, and then I'll show you how I plant the berries and where you go from there. So yeah, check it out. Alright, so to plant the berries, you just need a few supplies. I like to have my sprayer on hand, a few paper towels. Obviously, you're gonna need your freshly picked berries. I like to take off the skin and put the seeds in water the same day I pick them. You can wait like a day or two, but they kind of deflate and start losing all the liquid in them. And I haven't done really any testing to see how long the freshly picked berries last, but I would just do it within the first day, maybe in the second day. But if you've left them for a long time and still planted them, let us know in the comments below how long the freshly picked berries last. But like I said, I would try and plant them, or I would try and peel them, put the seeds in water, and then plant them all within like a 24-hour period. And then I have some seeds that I picked yesterday, or some berries that I picked yesterday, and some seeds in water already. So those I will show you how to plant, and then I'll show you how I peel the berries. And then also I use these little 4-ounce deli cups that I just get from the grocery store. And then they come with these little lids, and I poke a little hole right in the center, as you can see. And I just cap them up, and that little hole gives them a little bit of breathing air, but it keeps it nice and humid in there. And it works pretty darn well. I reuse the caps. I don't think it needs to be like 100% super sterile and clean for these guys. I just use a little sphagnum moss. That is the last thing you're gonna need. I usually chop up the sphagnum moss into like little pieces, as you can see. I don't like to use it all string because I like to just place it in there so it's nice and flat, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, so let's get started. I'll show you guys a better up close view of how I do this. So basically, the first thing I do is wet down my paper towels, and then we go from there. Here's the seeds from yesterday. By the way, I peeled them and put them in water for 24 hours before I plant them. That seems to work pretty good. Oops, poured some out. I think you can plant them right after you pick them, but a lot of other seeds for a lot of other plants, you put them in water for 24 hours. So I've always done that with the Anthurium seeds as well. Haven't really looked into the science behind that, to be honest. So if you know the science behind why you soak your seeds for 24 hours, comment down below and let us all know. All right, so first thing we are going to do here is plant the seeds from yesterday. We're gonna go ahead, get our little deli cup and our little sphagnum moss. And I just like to fill it up probably halfway because it kind of condenses down in there, and I like to leave a little space at the top. So I'll go ahead, and I'm not packing this down super tight or anything, but I just give it a nice little pat down. Then I will get my water give it a little spray. And this you want to not pack down super tight like I was saying. I just do it just to make a nice little flat surface to plant the seeds on. And you want to give it enough water to get the sphagnum moss wet, but you don't want it to be soaking wet, obviously. But what I like to do is spray it, wait like 30 seconds and make sure it's all moist all the way through, not soaking wet, and then plant the seeds in there. All right, so let me fill up my other cups. All right, I adjusted the view so you can see it a little bit better. Here is the cup. See, it's about halfway filled with sphagnum moss, and I'm sure you can see it's moist all the way through. If I turn it upside down, no water's falling out, and it's staying in there kind of like jello or something. So yeah, it's moist all the way through, but it's not dripping wet, which is what you want to achieve when you're wetting your sphagnum moss. Then the second step is we're going to grab the seeds. I like to do about 2 to 3 seeds per cup, just because it's easier when you're transplanting them. If you put too many seeds in a cup, then it can get a little crowded. And I don't bury them or anything. I just put them on top of the surface of the moss and kind of stick them down in there. By the way, these are the green on green variegated crystal crossed with the red crystal. So yeah, hopefully we get some cool variegated red crystals or cool versions of variegated crystals, but I'm gonna have to be pretty lucky to get that to happen. So yeah, here's our cup. I'll give you a little close-up, but you can see we got 1, 2, 3 seedlings in there. And then we're just gonna put the cap on, put a name tag, and you can put the date if you want, but I don't really put the date anymore. But let me give you a close-up. All right, so here's a close-up. You can see we got our 3 seeds in there. They're still sitting on top of the sphagnum moss, but they're poked in a little bit. And we got 3 seeds per 4-ounce cup. Now we're just gonna cap them, put a little label, and let them bake, baby. I print these little labels up with my, I think it's called like a P-Touch machine or something, but it's just basically a label maker. But you can see we got RC for red crystal times GOG for green on green. And you always want to put the plant that holds the seeds as the first one, and then put the pollen donor for the second one. That's just the correct way to label them. And if you're going to sell them, it's better to write it like that, so people know exactly what they are buying, and you know exactly what you have. So the red crystal is the mom, and the green on green is the dad, or the pollen donor. All right, there we go, our finished cup. You can see it's labeled, got the cap on, got our little hole in the cap, and we got our 3 seeds. Now I'm gonna plant the rest of the seeds. I think I have 5 more seeds, and then I'll show you what to do once you collect the berries, how to get the skin off and then put them in water and everything. Then I'll show you some seedlings. So now we have a little stack of 3 cups with 8 seeds, and you can go ahead and put these under a light, or you can keep them in a less lighted area. But yeah, it really doesn't make a difference. I pretty much like to leave them in here until the first or second leaf comes out and kind of smashes against the top of the lid. But basically after the first leaf comes out and hardens off, you can take the cap off and they'll be good to go. And if you're a little bit nervous, you can take the cap off during the day and put it back on at night, or vice versa. But yeah, let's show you how you de-skin or whatever the fresh berries. All right, so basically when you get the berries, I like to get a paper towel and get it nice and wet. Oh yeah, one more tip before I do this is that with the sphagnum moss, you basically want it, like I was saying, not soaking wet but moist. Basically, to figure out how wet you need it, you can get a handful of it and get it soaking wet, and then squeeze it like as hard as you can and squeeze out all the water, and then feel how moist that is, and that's about as much water as you want in there when you squeeze it, and no more water comes squirting out, kind of like wringing out a sponge or a dish towel. You want it to be wet but not soaking wet. All right, so here's the berries we picked today. We got 4. Some of them will probably have 2 seeds in them. Maybe they'll all have 2 seeds. Usually the first good amount of berries that I pick have 2 seeds, and then kind of when you get to the end of the inflorescence, they start having 1 seed in them. But that's just been my experience. I don't know if that happens every single time. But yeah, let's check these out. So basically, I'll empty the berries onto the piece of paper towel, and then you kind of just squeeze them out on there. So we got 2 berries on that one. I like to separate them. And then I kind of like to get a separate paper towel that's wet and kind of just rub them off, because they will have this little casing on the outside. You'll see it's kind of like a little skin, and I like to take that off. I don't know if you're if it really matters or not, but I just don't like any extra organic material in with my seedlings, because those give them a more chance to rot. So I kind of take that little skin off, and bada bing, bada boom. We got our fresh 2 little seeds. Let's zoom up on those. So there's our first berry de-skinned. We got 2 little seeds out of it, and then we'll go ahead and put those in the cup of water and leave them overnight. And bada bing, bada boom. Then you plant them the next day like we just did with our last seeds. So let me go ahead and get the rest done. By the way, I just put them in a little cup of RO water, or you can use distilled water. I just don't like using tap water because you never really know what's in it. I live in Los Angeles too, and it's kind of sketchy. Sometimes it can be filled with chlorine or whatever. There's bubbles just from my sprayer, but yeah. Just put the little seeds in the water, let them sit for 24 hours, and then you put them in the moss. So let's get the rest of them done. And there we go. I think we got 8 seeds. And if you don't get that little casing I was talking about off, don't worry about it too much. It's really not a big deal. But you'll see after leaving them in here for 24 hours, you'll see some of them might have a little skin that comes off. And like I was saying, you can probably plant them with that. It's not a very big deal. I've done it before. But I just like to wipe it off. It takes just an extra second. And then you can be sure there's not anything that's going to rot in there. But also, like I said, it really doesn't make a difference. I've planted them before. But yeah, so let's show you some that have grown out already. All right, guys, and like I was saying, this is not a master class on how to breed Anthurium. We're not going to go into the nitty gritty, but this is basically an intro into breeding them. I just want to show you how to do everything to get you started so you're not too nervous about growing them yourself. But as you can see here, these ones are a couple weeks old. You can see the ones back there are already getting their second leaf. So you can see right there at the bottom is the second leaf coming out. All right, and these are red crystals to the long bullet pap, the pap that is over there in the corner. This leaf and that leaf crossed to my red crystal. But yeah, so you can see here we have a bunch of seedlings. There's mostly 2 to 3 seeds per cup. So not all of them have their second leaf yet. But you can see some of them do have their second leaf coming in, like this guy right here. But like I was saying, you can pretty much take the cap off after the first leaf comes out. And that just gets them used to the normal humidity a lot faster. And you just want to make sure you don't let the sphagnum moss dry out. I probably spray it like once every 1 to 2 days just to make sure it doesn't dry out. But yeah, it's pretty simple to grow these guys. You plant the seed, just leave it there until it comes out. In like a couple weeks, you'll start noticing them putting out their first leaf. First, you'll see a little hairy root come out, and then you'll start to see the leaf pop out. And then after a couple more weeks, they get to this level. It's kind of hard to see what they're gonna turn into at this state. Sometimes you can see if they're gonna be variegated or not. Sometimes you can see if they're gonna be bolate, which is like more bumpy. Like you can see this one back here is a little bit more bumpy than some of them, or even the one behind it back there. Some of them are a little bit more smooth, like let's see here, kind of like this guy right here. But yeah, once they start popping out their third and fourth leaf, you can start to notice a little difference in them. So these are their first leaves are out. Some of them are popping out a second leaf. Like you can see, these ones are about to pop out their second leaf. But let's take you over to some that are a little bit further advanced. All right, so these guys are Magnificum crossed to a Forgetii, and you can see they're super crowded in the cups. This is about the time you want to think about repotting them into something bigger, maybe into a 2-inch pot. This is one I think I'm going to keep. It has some super nice thick veins already at this size. You can see the other ones haven't really caught up to it there. But there's a few in here that I kind of like the look of. So you can see some of them don't do too well. I'm trying to find them. Find one that kind of isn't doing too well. But I don't know, all of them look pretty good. Some of them might get a bug here and there, and that kind of messes with them when they're this size. But once I repot them, I treat them for bugs. Actually, I treat them for bugs like once a week usually, or once every 10 days, just to make sure they stay nice and fresh. But yeah, some of them are just not very vigorous, but that's normal when you have, like, I think there's 150 seedlings here, maybe closer to 200. I'm not sure exactly, but these are the ones around here that I'm thinking about keeping. Usually out of like 500 seedlings, I'll keep like 1 to 5. So maybe like freaking, I don't even know what percentage wise that is. Maybe like 1% of them I'll keep. And the rest I just sell for super cheap to people online, or I send them to nurseries, or I just toss them if they're not doing too good. You don't really want to keep the one. Oh, here's an example of one that's not doing too good. You can see it stayed super small. It just never caught up. So that one's probably gonna end up being trash. But yeah, this little guy right here just never did good, and that's not one you're gonna want to keep. Sometimes if they have deformities that are cool, you can keep them, like if they're super wavy looking or something like that. Yeah, the ones with like weird deformities that don't grow or anything like that, that just aren't hardy, you want to just toss those, because those aren't going to be something you want to add into your breeding projects. All right, so you can see the roots starting to circle on the bottom here. This is about the time you're going to want to repot. This one's not that bad because I think there's only 2 seedlings in there, but let's find one with 3 seedlings in it that is healthy looking. All right, so you can see here the roots on this one are crazy. They go all the way around. It definitely needs to be repotted. These ones should get repotted this week. They're definitely a little bit overdue for it. It gets to be kind of a pain in the butt when they get to this stage and they're not repotted, because you kind of have to untangle the roots, and that takes a long time, and time is money, folks. Just kidding, but seriously. But yeah, so untangling the roots can be kind of a pain in the butt, but it's not that big of a deal, honestly. That's why you don't want to have more than 3 seedlings in a container though, because then it gets super gnarly when you have like 4 or 5 in there. But yeah, at this point you definitely want to repot, because they start getting a little yellow. The watering gets inconsistent because they dry out super fast. To give them enough water, it kind of floods it a little bit. So yeah, they start suffering around this time. But yeah, you can notice a lot of the different shapes and sizes of the seedlings, which makes growing seedlings fun. But yeah, and then some of them are darker, like this guy right here. When you see hundreds of seedlings all the time, you start noticing little differences, and it can be a fun little game to pick out the cool ones. But let's go over to the next size up. All right, so these ones are some Pap times Forgetii, and you can see here's some that I picked out. Here's one with a completely closed sinus that looks more like a Forgetii, but it has a cool color. So that one I'm keeping. But yeah, so the next stage you want to do is get them. These are little 2-inch pots, and I think they're 3 inches tall. And I put them in this little tray so they're nice and easy to water. I just fill this up with like 1 inch of water. You can see there's like little holes at the bottom of the pots. I basically just fill the water a little bit higher than the hole, and then it makes watering hundreds of plants at the same time a little bit easier. But yeah, now you can see these ones are growing roots out of the bottom. Usually you can snip those roots that are coming out of the bottom of the pot and they'll grow a little bit more in there. But then you get roots kind of starting to pop out the top of the pots, like how this one has here. But yeah, they can stay in these little pots for quite a while. I like to trim all the extra leaves off. Like I usually only leave 1 or 2 leaves just to get some good airflow running through there, keep the pests down and everything like that. And then you can see here, some of them have like a little bit of spotting. That's because I sprayed them with 90% alcohol, and that kind of messes them up when the new leaves are coming out. So if you want to spray alcohol, I would suggest use the 70%. It still kills all the bugs and it doesn't really damage the plant, but I only had 90% on hand, so I went with that. You can see here's another one with a connected sinus here. That's kind of like a forgetti. So I'll probably end up keeping that one too. There's a few of them like that. And then after they're at this size, so these are the 2-inch square pots, I will move them into cups. And I still keep them in the perlite pumice mix just because it's easier for me to bare root them and ship them. And if I sell them to customers, they can go ahead and plant it in soil, put it in moss, put them in water, plant them up however they like. And they usually transition pretty well when they're just growing in this. But you can see these are some holdback ones. This one has a cool pap shape, but you can see the sinus is connected here. The sinus is the part in between the 2 lobes on the top. So regular paps have just big ears on them, and forgettii are closed all the way around. So this is, I thought, a nice little mix between both of them. So I decided to keep that one. And then here's one that has an even more pap shape, and the sinus is still closed. You can see right here it's connected. I don't know, I kind of like the one behind it because it's a little more round. Hopefully it ends up being a little more heart-shaped, but I don't know. It's the fun part about growing seedlings. You never know what you're gonna get. And then this one I kept because it still has a little bit of a closed sinus, but it's a lot darker, so it could be cool. But you can see those are getting some new leaves on them. So probably when those new leaves open up, I'll be able to have a better idea of what they're gonna look like in their mature state. But yeah, that's basically how you go from collecting the berry to planting them in the sphagnum moss, planting them up in their first pots, and then moving them to their second pot, getting them ready for their adult life. You know what I'm saying? Here's a few more seedlings that are definitely ready for a repot. These are like 2 paps crossed together. You can see the roots are slowly filling up the bottom of the pots. But yeah, so that is the setup there. But yeah, basically that's how you go from the inflorescence to the berries, to the seeds, to planting them, to getting them bigger. And then you grow them all the way out to nice big adult ones like those guys over there. Alright guys, like I was saying, that's not going to be a master class on growing anthuriums, but it's a little intro video into growing anthuriums and breeding them on your own, just so you can do this at home and be comfortable doing it yourself. Like I said, you can do hybrids, you can do pure ones, you can do it however you want. Can get a little overwhelming in the beginning, so I suggest you don't start crossing all your anthuriums at once and getting all of them to berries. Then you're gonna have hundreds of seeds, then you're not gonna have any space, and then you're gonna have a problem picking ones to keep. That's kind of where I am right now. I have like over 500 seedlings and I'm like, which ones should I keep, which ones should I give away? And then people come over to buy them and then they want to pick some out, and then I'm like, no, I'm keeping that. And then I'm like, dang, I should have sold it. So yeah, don't do too many at a time. I usually will cross one anthurium to another and then wait a month or 2, then do another pairing, and then wait a month or 2 and then do another pairing, and eventually you'll have so many, it's gonna be super duper fun. You'll always have seedlings and then the next stage and the next stage, and you'll always have some to look at and you'll always have some to go through. So I guess my suggestion is to pick a family of anthuriums you like a lot and start with there. I've seemed to have good lucks with the pap and the crystals. I have a lot of those, but I've also done my Lux, and that takes like I said, it's been 6 months since I pollinated and still doesn't have berries. I did a Clarinervium, and that one was pollinated for 6 months, and I went out of town and the inflorescence died. So I would suggest looking up the anthurium you're going to pollinate and seeing how long it takes the berries to form, because you don't want to pollinate one that's going to take a year to form berries the first time you do it, because then you're just going to get all anxious and everything. Just try and start with something that takes her like 2 to 3 months to form berries, and you're gonna have a lot easier time telling if it's pollinated and stuff like that. I guess the last tip I can tell you speaking about that is the easiest way to tell if your inflo is pollinated is it will stay alive. If it's not pollinated within like the first month, it'll just start to brown off and die. But if it's pollinated, the stem on it will stay nice and healthy and green or red or whatever color it is. Let me show you. All right, so I know I showed this one before. This one is about to pop off with berries, but you can see here, the stem is nice and healthy. It's nice and plump, and it's still alive, and it's been pollinated about a month or two. I marked it down here. It got pollinated on 11/12, so it's been like almost 2 months, like 6 weeks since it's pollinated, and you can see it's still nice and healthy. If it was 6 weeks and it wasn't pollinated, it would be turning brown, and it'd be sagging down and look like it was dying. So that's the easiest way to tell if it's pollinated. Also, you can, like I was saying, you can see the little black dots opening up there. That's another way to tell if it's 100% pollinated and you get these little bumps in there. That's a sure way to know. But like I said, if it's still healthy and it's not dying, then it's probably pollinated. After like a month or two, if it's still alive, you're probably good to go. All right, guys, so don't be afraid to give this a try. It's a super fun experience. You might fail a couple times, but I swear, if you pay attention to this video and do exactly what I say, you'll probably be successful the first time. It's pretty darn easy. Just rub the pollen onto the sticky substance, which I still have to film, but obviously you've seen that in this video already. But yeah, just rub the pollen from one flower to another, and they will be pollinated. Like I was saying before, you can store pollen in the refrigerator, but we'll go into that a different video when we do sort of more of a masterclass on breeding anthuriums. But like I said, this is just an intro to get you into it. And yeah, hope you liked the video. Let me know if you have any questions or suggestions, or if you have any tips or tricks for people breeding anthuriums, comment them down below. But yeah, peace out for now, homies. I hope you liked the video, and I will catch you on the flip side.